Ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It's Real Late, Hot 97. My name is Peter Rosenberg. Carson, California's finest, TDE's own Reason with me today. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's weird times, but I'm excited this week. It's been a long time coming.
It is weird times. I guess and it's interesting for you because this has been like the sort of, I guess, the timeline you've probably been on for a minute, but you didn't realize the place the world would be in when you got to this point. So is that what the plan had been? Because you've been leaking records for a minute. So take me through the process for this album, which comes out Friday, in relation to COVID and everything that's been happening in the state of the world.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. We were supposed to we were supposed to drop New Beginnings sometimes last year, and Top is just a huge critic of the music, so he didn't feel like the music was all the way where it should be. So we kind of went back in, and it was originally only supposed to be like 6 or 7 songs, and we were supposed to drop in March, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we didn't really know what was going to go on. We weren't sure if it was just going to be like a temporary thing or what was going to happen. And then lo and behold, we're still here. So we felt like might as well go. It's as good as any time as any. And ended up extending it to about 14 records. So definitely not ideal for what we wanted, but I mean, the most important thing is the music. So that's what we're trying to get out to people.
What can you before we get into your TDE story and the working relationship with Top Dawg, etc., what can you tell people about Carson and about where you're at exactly? Because generally when it comes to Southern Central California, I mean, for a lot of people consuming hip hop who aren't from the area or spend a lot of time there, they know about LA, they may know about the Bay. Any place else that's just outside of those places completely confuses people. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing. I know you were a serious baller, but take me through your life coming up and what Carson's like.
Carson is proud. Like, I feel like anybody from Carson is very proud to be from Carson, but it's a smaller city in comparison to name wise, in comparison to the Inglewoods, the Long Beach, the Comptons. But that's what ultimately the goal is. Like, somebody had to make those places quote unquote cool, or whatever the case may be, what I mean, to speak about. But I was born in South Central. I was there for like the first 7 years of my life. It was a lot going on then in the 90s. And so ultimately my mom felt like it was in the best interest to move us out and get us somewhere else. And that's why I'm so proud of Carson, is because Carson it gave me a shot to me, like all my homies and my cousins and stuff like that stayed in South Central. I don't feel like they were dealt a fair hand as far as, growing up and being able to get the same opportunity. So I'm proud to be from there because I feel like it gave me a shot. It gave me an opportunity to be able to, know something else. It's not the safest place, but definitely a lot safer than where I was growing up at.
It's interesting too, though, because it's just south of Compton, and so like it's literally blocks away, and yet one place has this like
2 minutes away from Compton. And I tell people that all the time. Like, I used to walk for like 7 minutes.
Yeah, so one place is a neighborhood that is like has such a reputation and so much, in a weird way when it comes to hip hop. I mean, Compton has such gravitas, and then you're from Carson, which is literally like a block over, and it's almost like you're starting something completely from scratch when really you're seconds away.
No, 1,000%, 1,000, and it's funny how it works like that, because even the division sometimes feels like that. Like, and I try to challenge artists over here, like, like rock with people from, the cities that are right next to you. It's like, we're all literally from the exact same place. Like, if shit started in Compton, it could easily trickle over to if it started in Compton, it could easily trickle over to Carson because of how close it is. So it's like, we're all going through the same struggles and temptations and everything.
So one thing that stood out when I was reading up on you, and I particularly because stylistically he doesn't sound close to you, in my naive opinion, is that your first favorite rapper was Fab. And when you hear your style, your sort of your voice quality / also your style, you don't have a similar pocket, seemingly anything like that to Fab. What was it about Fab? Was it just like when he was hot, super hot in relation to your life? But what was it about Fabulous that kind of spoke to you as a kid?
To me, he was the first rapper I heard with punchlines. Like him and Ludacris, for me, were the first rappers that were like, in my opinion, like doing heavy punchline rap, even on, singles or whatever the case may be. And I've always been super interested, and I used to gravitate to artists that would do wordplay and punchlines and similes and stuff like that. So that's really what it was. And it's funny because I agree with you. I don't, stylistically sound like him at all, but I did keep that part from him where, regardless of what I'm, doing, I'm still trying to be clever with wordplay and punchlines and be known for that, if anything, when it's all said and done.
Let's play a couple of joints from Reason right now. I definitely want to play Sauce with Vince Staples and play a couple of joints off the album. New Beginnings is here. Reason is here. Carson, California is in the building. It's real late, Hot 97. Yeah, as we continue on with Reason on Real Late. Now, listen, full disclosure, I wanted to, learn more about you. So I was like, let me do some research, watch some interviews. And I tried my best to power through all of Joe Budden's talking to get to some of your actual talking. And I found some of it. It took some time, but I know this about Joe, so it was a process. But tell me about that experience for you getting to talk with Joe, who on the episode that you're on of the Joe Budden podcast, he basically says he doesn't want to talk. He goes through basically saying he hates every single rapper, doesn't want to talk to rappers, and then follows it up by being like, but I want to talk to you. So tell me about A, what that meant to you, and B, how the conversation went and the feedback you got afterwards.
Yeah, it was actually dope. I actually pulled up. I was on a press run for my last project. There you have it. And we were literally, my plane was leaving at like 8 or something like that. And I had already tapped in with Joe and Rory and Maul just because they had played some of my stuff on the podcast and just gave me a lot of love. So I'm just real big on, if I'm in your city and you show me love, like I'm gonna pull up and show love back. So I pulled up, I had a couple bottles and just really was just coming in to say what's up. And it's funny because the first thing Joe said to me when I walked in was, Reason, you're not going to be on the podcast. I'm like, bro, I'm not here to be on the podcast. Like, I just want to show love. And we started arguing because that's what Joe likes to do, is argue. And we started arguing about like the industry and getting into the industry and different things like that. And he was just like, get Reason a microphone. We're going to put him on the podcast. And that's literally how it happened. So I actually feel like I know he was genuine when he said he doesn't like to talk to rappers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But it was dope, though. And I appreciate Joe because he's always honest with me. With everything that he hears, he always gives me honest feedback with however he feels about everything. So anybody that can be honest with me, I appreciate him.
One point that I thought was interesting, the part that I watched, was Maul was saying that, the game is so different, and at your stage where you're at, someone back in the day, after only a few years rapping, wouldn't necessarily be on a platform so big. And like in one breath, I agree with that. Like I definitely think the barrier to entry is obviously much lower than it used to be. But at the same time, I mean, Maul's also young. Like, you could be in the game a few years back in the day, and your labels back then would get you a radio run. Now, granted, it didn't have this national audience that we're aware of like we are now. But guess what? Local radio meant more back then. So showing up to a town, and if you go to D.C. and they put you on, WKYS at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that's a big deal. So, like, I say all of that to say, yes, you do have more reach faster, but you're also competing with so many different people, and also you're not getting some of the other looks that used to have a bigger impact. Like, even this show right now, I can say this honestly about my own show. It's great that you're doing my show. The level to that this look would have been in 1996 is totally different than the look it is right now.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. And that's what I was trying to tell Maul, is that, just like exactly what you said, the entry is much quicker or easier, but at the same time, you plateau way faster, and it's hard to break through that barrier because, like you said, like there it doesn't mean as much. Like, I've been on the radio here in LA, and I'm thankful to the DJs that put me on the radio, but at the same time, it just doesn't mean as much as it did back in the day. You know what I mean? Back in the day. And what I told Maul was, yeah, it would be a lot harder to reach the level that I'm at now. But if you're nice back in the day, like you're out of here. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like, I'm a confident person. I feel like the talent that I have, if I was at this level back in the day, it would be a year and I would be, in my opinion, one of the household names. You know what I mean? But that's not necessarily the case. You have so many talented dudes. I always use my homie Boogie as an example. He's one of the most dopest artists that I know. Shout out to him.
Yep.
And it's still, it's still a process. You know what I mean? And he's done incredible things. But we're all going through that same process, same fight, trying to garner attention, because that's the most important thing nowadays.
That must be weird for you too. So you've been now with TDE for a little while, and you likened it, to being signed by the Lakers, like, and with good reason. But at the same time, there aren't tiers to the Lakers. I mean, I guess there's tiers of playing time, but you're all like being exposed in the same way. You're on with TDE, but as I'm sure you could attest to, the experience you have in life right now is not the same as Schoolboy Q or Kendrick Lamar. You're still earning stripes. So what is that like? Has there been an adjustment, from like you sign and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, my dreams are all coming true in 1 second. And it really was more like setting the table for your dreams to come true, but it doesn't mean that everything's going to click instantaneously.
Exactly. And I feel like that was like the biggest hurdle for me, is that I thought, I was like, oh, I signed a TDE. Like, we made it. Like, this is it. You know what I mean? And then.
And I know the people around you felt that way for sure.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I mean, I felt that way. You know what I mean? I even went through, the whole thing of like, I need to change my number now. I need to do this. I need to do this. Block myself out from the outside distractions. And it's like, yeah, you're here. You know what I mean? And people acknowledge that, and congratulations. It's great. But you still have to get past the where's Kendrick, where's Q, where's Rock, where's Zay, you know what I mean? And you have to literally fight for every piece of attention, you know what I mean? So it's almost like when you sign with TD, you get 20,000 fans that automatically know who you are, but you still have to make them care, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And that's a constant fight. And it's been why I've been so adamant, you know what I mean, about, even when I wasn't dropping, I was so adamant to top, like, we got to keep putting out records. We got, like, I can't disappear like these other guys that have earned the luxury to dip off for 3 years. Like, I can't do it.
You have to have learned some sage things, I would guess, from J-Rock. I know you guys went on tour together, and, J-Rock is the backbone of this whole thing. He's where it all started. And he's also had to play background too. Like, he's had to do everything. And then he finally, a couple of years ago, gets a monster win with his album, no pun intended on the single. And he finally really steps out in the forefront for a minute. But did he give you some sage advice? Because his experience has been quite unique.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And that's what the biggest thing that Rock has taught me. And he's actually somebody that I run to when I do feel certain ways. You know what I mean? I call him because he truly knows the importance of patience. Like you said, this is a guy that kicked it all off. He had a record with Wayne. I remember as a kid them driving J-Rock's van through the neighborhood, because what people don't know is the Top Dawg corporate like house where it started is in Carson. So I grew up down the street from that, and so they used to drive the van, throughout the neighborhood and play My Life with him and Wayne. And so this is a guy that kicked it off. Dot was doing background ad libs for him, and he had that unfortunate accident and everything had to be put on hold. So if anybody knows the true meaning of patience and waiting for your time, it's Rock. And so I try to lean on him as much as possible. Just when I'm feeling those type of ways, you know what I mean? Because we're human, regardless of, the label that we're signed on, we're humans first, you know what I mean? And so I had to adjust to that.
Well, and it's interesting, TDE is like, it's a family, and like family, there are issues, and they're not, as opposed to some places, they're not completely private about it. I mean, everyone's had, not everybody, several people, SZA, Solo, people have had their moments of voicing their frustration and being like, nah, I'm ready. And it's almost one of the hard things about having a label that's so stacked with talent. And to the point you were making about meaning something to people. Like, yo, TDE is so stacked with people who can rap really well and uniquely that sometimes, like, I'll hear about a new artist, and yeah, you have a moment of like, all right, I know they're going to be great, but what is that? Does that draw me in to listen? Like, is that enough to just know that they're a great rapper? And what do you do to show people, especially when you're real, because they also sign people who are all authentic, deeply care about the craft. So what do you do to sort of find that sticky point when you're not about, you're not flossing money on Instagram and doing some of the things that are like the tropes that artists sometimes fall into.
Um, and that is the challenge. You know what I mean? It's not about just the music anymore, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It's not about the talent anymore, unfortunately. And you have to try to find ways to win in an oversaturated, gimmicky industry on a label that doesn't use gimmicks. So it's almost like, you're throwing me into an arena in a gunfight with a knife. Everybody else uses guns, but I can't use a gun because that's not the culture over here. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to be able to fight through that, and you have to be able to stay patient and believe in the process, as far as know that, Top and the label knows what they're doing, and they're going to find a way to be able to put you at the forefront. But it's also about being patient, because we like to build an organic fan base before, like, Top can make a phone call tomorrow and give me a record with one of the biggest artists in the world if he wanted to. You know what I mean? But at the same time, that record would be bigger than I am. So his big thing is, you need to establish a core fan base first. You need to be able to establish your core following. That way, when you do explode, you have that foundation. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these artists, they don't have a foundation when they explode, and they're known as their record and not the artist. Like, we'd be like, oh, that's the guy that made whatever the record may be. You know what I mean? So, but it's definitely a process. You know what I mean? And it's something that you got to stay patient with and believe in, and just kind of rely on the people around you to stay grounded, because it's not easy at all.
That must be one of the frustrations of COVID, beyond all the sort of obvious stuff, is that for you, you're in the spot where really building fan base, part of it is going out on the road with other acts who are bigger than you and gaining audience. How much has this sort of messed up those plans, and what do you do, considering we don't know what the end of this looks like?
Yeah, no, 100%. It definitely threw a wrench in things. I had at least 4 tours lined up this year. You know what I mean? One of them would have been my own. And even this project, like, it sucks from an artist standpoint, because I made a lot of these songs with performing in mind. You know what I mean? That's something that Dot taught me. It's like, don't only think about the song, think about the video, think about, performing, think about all that while you're actually creating the song. So I took that into account making this project. And then it's like, you get COVID, and it's not necessarily, you know what I mean, the ideal situation for that. So it's definitely different. I always live by, the mindset of control what you can control. And so I look at it like, everybody else is going through the same thing. I have to find ways to stay relevant and to still succeed, you know what I mean, in COVID. So I try to think about, ways to be able to do that, and step into the forefront on that. But I told Top, I was like, we can't wait until this is over to drop. We have to drop, because who knows when we're going to be able to perform anyway. And I'm a new artist, you know what I mean? So we got to get some new music out regardless.
Was that an uphill battle, or was he quick to agree?
He was quick to agree in the beginning, that, well, no, he wasn't quick to agree in the beginning. He felt like we should wait. But then as time just kind of went on and went on, and then, we got more and more reports, from when concerts were coming back or whatever the case may be. From an artist standpoint, I just told him, like, I don't even know if I'm going to want to perform all these records if we hold on to them for another year. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a growing standpoint too. So he definitely started to agree maybe around like month 3 of COVID. He was like, okay, we need to start making plans to be able to drop.
What do you feel like are people in your area, in LA in general, do you feel that people are taking COVID super seriously? How seriously do you take it? How much does it affect your life day to day? It's kind of being here in the city. It's obviously a different experience, A, from how bad it was for us early on, and B, being so close to people, like not having, living in apartments and whatnot. So what's that experience and viewpoint been like for you out in Southern California?
Yeah, I feel like everybody kind of did the same thing. We all kind of took it super, super serious. And then when people noticed it wasn't going away, people tried to return back to as much of their normal life as they could. I'm still taking it serious, because I got, I got my parents in my life, and they're a little bit older. So for me, I still, wear the mask and take the precautions and whatnot. But I'd be lying to you if I said that everybody in LA was taking it super, super serious. But at first they were. I can honestly say that, like, LA, I would probably say one of the big cities that did a really good job at, like, we're shutting everything down. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Yeah, and people included and whatnot. I know you can attest to that, because it hit New York really, really hard. And I have friends out there, and they told me, like, the streets were just empty, you know what I mean, for a long time. But I just think, it's ultimately one of them things that it's just the country. It's like we could have been past this if we just weren't so self-absorbed and caught up in what we want to do and money wise. Like we could have been past this. You know what I mean? I think it was Italy that had it even worse than us. And in three and a half, 4 months, it was over.
Yep, they were disciplined enough to and and cared enough about other people enough to go through the work, and yeah, now they're straight, and we're sitting here still basically stuck.
Still going through the same thing. And it started in March. I'm like, you know, April, May, June, we would have been done by summer. Everybody's complaining that their summer was gone. It's like we would have had an entire summer if we cared enough about each other to just shut up and stay in the house.
And then if people could have shut up at least by the end of summer, you could be thinking, well, maybe we could be good by Thanksgiving, and instead we're going to be thinking about, well, maybe we'll be good by spring.
Exactly. No, 1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah, but that's America though. You know what I mean? Like there's pros and cons to everything. The pro is that it's so free over here. You know what I mean? The con is that it's so free over here and everybody can do what they want to do and have an opinion. And it's hard to, you know, America's the type of place that if we would have put everybody on lockdown where you just can't leave, it would have been like a rebellion or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that wasn't that. We don't have the option. It's a place. It's a time when our freedom would have was biting us in the ass, basically.
Exactly. No, 100%.
Um, do you like being around in this era, or do you feel that you would have been better suited? Are you one of those people, one of those artists who's like, man, I should have been out in like '96, or do you feel like this is the time for you?
Nah, I feel like this is the time for me. Just because like I like the music in this era, me personally, better than the music in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think I'd be one of the few like lyricists, quote unquote, to say that. But there was, and it's only because of the amount of artists, if that makes sense. Like in the 90s, it was like there were like a handful of artists, and if they're not dropping, then it's like that's it. You know what I mean? And for me, I have so many favorite artists, and I have the access to be able to go listen to, you know what I mean, people that I wouldn't have the access to back in the day unless they were on the radio. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's more about that as far as from a fan standpoint. There's local artists that are some of my favorite rappers, and I wouldn't have even heard of them if we didn't have the access that we do, you know what I mean, to technology and whatnot.
It's a great point, and there may be better music now available than ever before. It's just again that the barrier of entry is so much lower that there's so much of it. But if you look for it,
Yeah, if you look for it, you can find some really, really dope people. You know what I mean? Like now, from a selfish standpoint, as far as my career, I definitely think I would have been bigger if I was in the 90s. But for me, it's not all about that. Like it's just about the music and how it impacts people. Like that's honestly how I feel. Like I had a conversation with a friend's manager the other day. We were going through like clearing verses and whatnot, and we just started talking about the industry. And I was like, I never wanted to be the biggest artist in the world. I just wanted to be able to have my music at a platform that it can impact people and I can make, I can make people feel good and changes in people's lives. And if I do end up being one of the bigger artists, and that's great, you know what I mean? But being able to just do what you love every day, I'm sure you can attest to it, doing what you love every day and people listening, you know what I mean? That's something that's priceless in itself.
100%. New Beginnings is the album. The man's name is Reason. It's been great getting to know you, bro. Thank you for coming on, and God willing, things return to normal one day. And Joe Biden is president, and you'll stop by the station. I'll see you in person.
Yeah, we got this conversation in person. Appreciate you, bro.
Look forward to it, man. Cheers.
Always.
Throwback next. It's real late.